Welcome everyone to this week's edition of Health Corner. Today we have a renowned community pediatrician, Dr. Molly Gupta, near Agarwal. Dr. Gupta works in Mid-Essex area and she has a special interest in healthy lifestyle and weight loss program. Anything that you could do to keep healthy without having to rely on medications, ask Dr. Molly. Dr. Molly, it's a pleasure to have you on Health Corner.
Thank you so much.
I know you've done a lot in the community, and people would like to know what areas have you, worked in this area, and obviously they want to hear about your interests.
Yeah. So thank you so much for introducing me and having me here today. So as you said, I'm a consultant community pediatrician in the Mid-Essex area. So I see children with autism, ADHD, disability, things like that. But I also have a wider interest in, healthy lifestyle, how to promote a healthy lifestyle, and how to make sure that, parents know what to feed their children and how to get them to be fit and have a healthy life so they reduce their risks of developing illnesses later on that are linked to lifestyle.
Yes.
So that is
that's fine. Obviously, the audience will want to know. Now you talked about healthy lifestyle and healthy eating. Parents feed their children with a lot of fizzy drinks, different types of food. Is there any advice you give parents, on what to give their children? I mean, with your vast experiences, what are your observations working in the community?
Well, absolutely. I mean, as most people know that, there's a high rate of obesity amongst children at the moment. And 1 in 5 children, there was a survey in 2018 that showed 1 in 5 children are actually obese at the age of 10 when they're leaving primary school. So a lot of that is to do with diet and, lack of activity. So simple things can be done. Simple changes to lifestyle can be done, but they do have to be started early. So it's good if parents can, right from the beginning when the child is young, to develop good habits and a good lifestyle. But that also involves parents doing the same because children will do what they see their family and parents do. So simple things like, making sure that, for instance, if we go for the cereal they have in the morning for breakfast, it should be a cereal which has either got no sugar or very little sugar, because children do get used to eating foods that they're given from early on.
Yes.
So avoiding sugar is very important. It's bad for their teeth, but it's also bad for their general, lifestyle because it increases the risk of getting big and having weight problems later on. So simple things, because most children will eat cereal in the morning, and they should look at, before buying a cereal for their children, such as like Cocoa Pops, which is full of sugar, they need to look at the labels. How much fiber is there? How much sugar is there? So I would say anything less than 5 grams per 100 grams sugar they should look for, and they should look for cereals with high fiber content. Something similar to the sugar content. These things can make a big difference.
Yes.
So
right. So that's fruit and fiber. That's the cereals, isn't it? I know some parents not just feed their children on cereals in the morning. They give them these fizzy drinks.
Yeah.
Lemonade, cola.
Absolutely.
And is it misleading? Obviously, well, sometimes you ask the parents and they say, "Oh, it's 0 sugar."
Yeah.
Does that mean that there's no sugar, they are free to give it to the kids?
Right, so yes, so in terms of the drinks, I would say basically there's only 2 real drinks for children. Even for adults, I would say the main 2 drinks should be water and milk.
Okay.
I mean, things that are just natural. Anything like a fizzy drink Yes, parents do think that, you know, there's no sugar and it's okay, but actually that's not okay. The reasons behind it is they have certain sweeteners in there, artificial sweeteners in there. One of them is aspartame, that is very widely used in you know, the fizzy drinks. That also has its health risks. There is also another thing about sweeteners. So when you give your child, or when an adult takes a sweetener containing food, the sweetness of it is many more times that of sugar. So you get more used to having sweet food, and then you actually crave sugar. So it's not a good thing. And aspartame has its risks. There have been associations with cancer.
Right.
So it's something to avoid.
Yeah, exactly. Now, that is very useful. Talking about sweet things, you know, I understand that there are two things that make food sweet. It's either fat or sugars. So do you advise the fatty food in children?
No, I would say what we should eat, whether we're children or adults, but everything starts obviously as a child, so is whole foods, which means less processed foods.
Okay.
Foods, so what are processed foods? Foods that usually come in a packaging, unless they are the total, like for instance, if we buy nuts or we buy fruits, we know that that is just fruit or just nuts. So that's a whole food. That's fine, even if it's in a packaging. But if we're buying things like soups or noodles packet, you know, the ready-made pot noodles, things like that, that children do like and a lot of adults do like, and they're all highly processed foods. So they contain added sugar, added fat, added salt. They have minimal fiber because that processing that they have to do to keep it preserved involves taking out a lot of the nutrition out of there. So no, I wouldn't recommend things like that.
Right. So from what you're saying, do we trust all those things they write on the packagings? I mean, they said no added sugar, low fat. Does that really?
So we have to be very careful when we look at these. We have to be smart as a consumer.
Yeah.
So people can be fooled, and and I would say I myself have been fooled in the past because you look at smoothies, for instance.
Yeah.
You know, it will say on there unsweetened, or it will say natural fruit and just squeezed fruit. The problem with these things is that yes, they may be squeezed mainly fruit, but when you have lots of fruit together in that form, either a smoothie form or a juice form, it's actually packed with sugar. In fact, even orange juice, let's say, which is pure orange juice, nothing else added to it, it contains almost the same or even more than a bottle of Coca-Cola.
Right.
So we have to be careful. It's because it's too much sugar in one bottle. And the portion size, what is meant to be 150 mLs, which is about this much. But nobody drinks this much. People drink like, you know, a big glass. And so we have to be careful. We have to be smart, and we have to look at how much sugar and is there any fiber in that item. If the sugar is high and the fiber is either zero or basically very low, we have to think this is mainly sugar we're having.
Right.
So, and sugar is a problem.
Right. So obviously you're working with kids, and you know how the psychology of these little ones are. Do you think if a kid is fed with this food, is likely going to continue eating things like that to adulthood? Absolutely.
I think children, you know, they develop their taste buds are developing in the first few years. And you get used to what you eat. Like, I'll give you an example. When my children were quite young, you know, I wanted them to obviously eat more fruits and buy different fruits for them. So I remember actually once buying them apricots for the first time, and I brought them home and I made a big deal of it. So this is one of the things we can do, you know, form good associations. And I said, I bought apricots today. It's a really lovely fruit. It's a new fruit, and we're all going to have it as a treat. And it's, you know, and cut it up with excitement. And they just loved it. And they'd never had it because I was thinking maybe they're not going to like it. It's a new fruit. But since then, apricot is a special fruit for them. So that's how you need to cultivate these. Right from the beginning.
Yeah, but I mean, another interesting thing, you see, obviously, you see, obesity is generational, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Father is obese, and you know the children are likely going to take. So does that have to do with anything genetic, or is it purely environmental? Is it purely lifestyle?
Yeah. So the evidence shows that there may be a small genetic component in some cases, but actually it's quite small. The main factor seems to be environmental, and it is down to lifestyle. I mean, if we look at, you know, listen to the radio, watch TV, there's adverts all the time about McDonald's, about, you know, all the fast foods.
Yeah.
Even in India and in countries where, you know, the developing countries, which are now becoming westernized, they promote like noodles, pizza, and all these new sort of fast foods, which children love, and it's become like a fashion. It's become a trend that if it's somebody's birthday party, we'll get a pizza, we'll get some noodles, we'll get. They don't understand that actually these are the foods that are processed, highly processed, minimal nutrition, and later on will cause obesity. In fact, they are causing obesity. Because, you know, I see children coming into my clinic, and unfortunately the children I see are children who do have a restricted and limited diet often because of their condition. So if I have a child coming in with autism and their needs are slightly different, they have sensory issues, and they often do not like a wide range of foods, and for them McDonald's and these foods are like everything. But I don't know what would have happened if these didn't exist. Because if they're not there, you can't have had them. But unfortunately, that group of children, it can be difficult to widen there. But I think a child who does not have that sort of problem, you know, from the beginning, if you just make it the norm that we eat more vegetables, we eat more fruit, we eat legumes and, you know, pulses, we have whole grains in our diet, and make children used to that, then hopefully they will develop to like those foods, and make it a concept that actually these fast foods are unhealthy. Educate children right from the beginning. I do it in my clinic, so I have children coming in, and you know, a lot of children are obese or who've got ADHD, autism. A lot of them are not very active. Some of it is their eating pattern. And when I speak to the child and directly, you know, say, look, I tell you what, let's do this. You know, why don't you cut your portion size of this and take away the crisps from your lunchbox and put some fruit in there? What fruit do you like? And some kids will say, I like a banana. I said, have a banana. You know, it's much better to eat a banana than a packet of crisps and a penguin with you. So these are little things that we have to do.
So, no, this is fantastic. I mean, probably the last one or two questions before the end of this segment. You know, children's psychology. I mean, if you give a child a choice of something sweet and something not sweet, obviously you know what the child will choose.
Absolutely.
So if a parent doesn't want the child to go for something very sweet, how does that parent introduce this to the child? I mean, and it's a difficult one.
I think it does start early on, and if you've missed that opportunity, you know, things have moved on a little and get a bit harder. So as a toddler, you know, children will only eat what you give them. They don't know anything different. So if you are able to introduce fruit early as a sweet item, maybe a plain yogurt and add some fruit into there as their sweet pudding. Homemade puddings where you know exactly what's going in as the main thing, rather than buying things over the counter which we know have been processed. I mean, even a simple cake, when you buy it for your birthday, if you've made it at home, you know exactly what's going in. You can put wholemeal flour in there. When you buy it in the shop, it will have like 15, 20 items written at the back, which we don't know, our body doesn't recognize. So when it comes to a sweet item, I wouldn't say completely to children that you can't have sweet items. That's just not going to be possible in today's world. But I would say, you know, we need to have these in less quantity, less frequently, and don't make them as a special thing, and don't think of them as healthy foods. Actually know that they are unhealthy foods, but they can be eaten occasionally. That's
that's a very good advice for parents. And lastly, I mean, if you've talked about eating noodles and some fruits, are there fruits that are very high in sugar which parents should avoid?
I actually think that fruits, you shouldn't avoid any fruit. But what would be good to do is have a varied selection of fruits. So don't eat the same fruit every day. Like if somebody likes apples, don't make it just apples and bananas and that's all we eat, because that way you're missing out on certain vitamins and nutrients. The other thing about eating a variety of fruits and vegetables, in fact, is it actually increases your healthy bacteria in the gut, which is called microbiome. And the more fruit and vegetables of different colors and different types we eat, the more diverse, more varied our bacteria is. And that has been shown to actually have lots of health benefits, including losing weight. And not gaining weight.
Right. So I think if a parent is here, they will probably ask, you mentioned noodles. They are actually, they're not as healthy as they sound.
They're not at all as healthy. Right. So people think, you know, we're going to, I mean, I don't really want to talk about different restaurants, but Wagamama is very popular and we go there too sometimes. But the truth is this, when you go to a restaurant, it almost doesn't matter which restaurant you're going to. The chances are you're getting more calories, more fat in your food, more sugar, minimal fiber, absolutely minimal fiber, because it's all processed. So the noodles, if they gave whole wheat noodles, you'd get a little bit of fiber in there. But because they're not whole wheat noodles, they're refined, processed noodles, it's just carbs.
Fantastic. Dr. Molly, you've done a very good job with this first segment. Viewers, if you're just joining, we have Dr. Molly Gupta near Agawal, who is a community pediatrician, talking to us about healthy lifestyle for everyone, but especially children. Now, don't go away. We're going to take a short break, and then in the second segment, we have some other healthy lifestyle interventions. We haven't talked about exercise. And I know the pediatrician is well loaded with information. Stay tuned. Don't go away. Thank you. Welcome back to Health Corner. This is the second segment of this week's Health Corner, which deals with healthy lifestyle in children. We have the pleasure of listening to a community pediatrician, Dr. Molly Gupta near Agawal. Dr. Gupta, you talked about what people eat, especially children, what parents feed their children. I know it's a huge field to talk about, and we can't finish it. But do you mind if I ask you about things like bread? I mean, there are is it bread and rice, and do you have any advice around those?
Absolutely. So again, these are under the category of starchy carbohydrates. Now they do form an important part in our diet because we have to have a balanced diet. And the balanced diet, the number one comes carbohydrates, which again people think carbohydrates we shouldn't be eating. We should be eating, but it needs to be whole grain carbohydrates. And in that same category comes your vegetables and fruits. They're under carbohydrates. But starchy carbohydrates are also important, but they need to be whole grain. So when we buy bread, we need to be careful that it's not white without any fiber, which is totally processed. I mean, overall bread is quite a processed food. If you can make your own bread at home, fantastic, but very few people have time to do things like that. So most people will go and buy it, and lunchtime it's the usual thing to have a sandwich or a roll, or children take that. So it's important that we look again at the labels.
At the labels?
On the bread, because there are some breads which can be white and still high in fiber, because they've added seeds to them, and you just have to look at the label to see how much is the fiber content. And in bread, I would say anything above like 6.8 grams per 100 grams is pretty okay. And in terms of like, there will be sugar in there. There is still not I wouldn't call it a healthy food. It's better for, let's say we're talking about Asians, for instance. They eat rice, they eat chapati, and again, if you can have it whole grain and even change your grains. Rice, I would say don't eat too much white rice. Change it to brown. Brown rice is a good rice.
Does brown taste nice for children?
So in the beginning, it won't taste nice. But if you, because even I, when I converted from white to brown, I mean, everybody used to eat white before.
Yeah,
brown
exactly.
rice is a new thing. People
Yes.
were not. It does take some time to develop a taste.
Okay.
But I would suggest initially you cook it half and half. Make half white, half brown, mix it up.
Ah, okay.
Also spice it up.
Right.
You know, it's how you cook it can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Asian food is spicy anyway.
Yeah.
I think African
Food
also
is
has.
spicy as well.
So you know, put some spices in there, put some vegetables in there, put you know, and make it a little bit tasty that way. Once you do that and you've had it a few times, then convert it to brown, and you will start liking it. In fact, it becomes like you don't want white anymore.
Right.
So that is the thing for those sort of
And you know, when you go to the shops, you have basmati, you have the long grain rice,
Yeah.
and they're all white rice.
they're all white rice.
So right,
Go for
so
brown, yeah.
the brown ones are the.
That's right, yeah. And the other thing I would say with, especially with Asian food, in terms of chapatis, don't make it with white flour, which is what the norm is usually. Make it with multigrain, and even add more grains to it. You could add different things like gram flour, millets, millet flour. Everything's available nowadays.
Right.
You can just mix it up and
Yeah.
make it more nutritious.
Oh, fantastic! Yes, and you talked about lentils, beans, lentils.
Yeah, all of these are good. So again, these are whole grains. Even sweet corn is a whole grain, which is good because it's high in protein,
Right.
high in fiber. So avocado is good. It's good, good fat in there, monosaturated fat, which is, you know, it's all about the balance. So it's getting about, we need to have like 60 to 70% of our diet should actually come from healthy carbohydrates. And next category is actually fat.
Okay.
But it needs to be in the right balance. We don't
balance.
want a lot of saturated fat in our diet, which is butter, ghee, oils. We need to...
Cheese?
Oils are actually... cheese is also saturated. Oils is actually under the unsaturated category because it's plant-based.
Okay.
So cooking is better to do in oils.
Yeah.
But again, we have to do a balance, and it's better to do like the healthy oils would be like olive oil, canola oil, avocado oil, and changing these oils is
Yes.
good to get the nutrition.
Yes. So, right. So, if you have healthy oils, you have the unhealthy ones. So,
I mean, in terms of oil, I wouldn't say there's anything like you would say one is healthy, one is unhealthy.
Alright, okay.
But there's some that are healthier.
Done.
So the monounsaturated olive oil, we do know is good for the heart. But if we're looking at weight control, they have the same calories.
Yes.
It's more about you also have to look after your heart and your long-term risk of conditions. So some oils can be more healthier from that point of view. Oil is better to cook in than cooking in ghee or butter or lard. I would say completely don't use. Hopefully people don't use nowadays. But animal fat is something we need to be a bit careful about.
Even in children?
Even in children.
Right.
And
You know, a lot of African and Caribbean communities, it's coconut and palm oil.
so coconut is not necessarily a bad thing.
Right. Okay.
Again, it would be about varying. So coconut is one of those areas where there are good things about it and not so good things about it. But overall, it's actually a healthy food.
Right.
But I would say vary things. Don't do just coconut oil. We do
Yeah.
all our cooking in coconut oil. We don't use any other oil. Change it.
So in other words, I mean, there's nothing like never eat this. It's just
No.
a variation.
I mean, children should have some butter.
Yes,
Children
exactly.
should have some ghee.
Because they're growing up,
Less,
isn't it?
but less quantities. Don't use
Right.
it for cooking.
Right, okay. So, yeah, I mean, we've been talking about the intake food. These are what we take in, isn't it? So we want to know, how do we burn any of these excess calories? I mean, if
Yeah.
a child has accumulated one or the adult has accumulated excess calories, do you subscribe to children being active, exercise?
Absolutely. Do you mind if I just go back to one thing?
Yes, please.
So there was one category that I didn't mention. One is the protein. We need to also make
Oh,
sure that we have
yes,
good
very
quantity
important.
of protein in our diet. But like people nowadays are thinking that we need to eat a lot of protein, that's not actually the case.
Right.
Yes, we do need a good amount of protein, but it's not all about getting it through meat, and
Yes.
you know, it should be through, again, more plant-based sources is better.
Okay.
Through the beans, the lentils, chickpeas,
Yes.
and things like that. One food I would definitely try to avoid, and that is your processed red meats,
Yeah.
or red
processed
meat in
meat.
general, actually.
Okay.
But things like bacon, sausage rolls, and salami, pepperoni. A lot of parents tell me, you know, my child isn't eating bacon, but he just started bacon, and they're excited about it. But I'm actually not too
Yeah.
keen they start these foods,
Yeah.
because these are highly processed and they're red meat,
Yeah, red
which
meat.
has a high, we know it causes cancer.
It causes
We
cancer,
know
isn't
that.
it? Yeah. Also in children as well.
Well, it's because if you start eating anything early on, you will carry on eating it. High quantity of fat in there,
Yes.
sugar and salt in there, not sugar but salt in there, and even some things like nitrates in there, which we know are related to risks like cancer.
Yes.
It's not a good thing that I would give as a treat.
Right. So things like egg.
So eggs are okay. Again, there is some controversy around eggs too, but I wouldn't dismiss eggs. I would say it's okay, but everything has to be in moderation.
In moderation, isn't it?
Maybe 2 or 3 times a week is okay for breakfast. Oily fish is okay. Again, portion size matters,
Yes.
and having a couple of portions a week is fine. But if you go above that portion, then you also have risks
Yes.
of even toxins from, you know, there is some risks of mercury poisoning
Yeah.
can be there, and everything has to
That's
be
in fish,
moderation.
is it? Or seafood in general?
In fish and seafood, yeah.
No, okay.
I know about fish, oily fish in particular, yeah.
Talk about portion sizes.
Yeah.
That's probably one thing parents don't know.
They
Someone
don't.
said, oh, you shouldn't eat portion sizes more than the palm of your hand. Is that true? Does that?
Well, they actually say this together is a whole, should be the meal, whatever
So,
comes into your,
yeah,
that
okay,
should be
okay,
actually.
that's fine.
And the palm of the hand is a good way to measure your portion size of individual items.
Okay.
So, for instance, if we're saying an apple,
Yeah.
so that's like one portion.
One portion.
One apple is one portion.
Mm-hmm.
2 small plums is one portion.
Yeah.
So ideally, at least 2 or 3 portions of fruit we should eat in a day.
Well, okay.
And nowadays the recommendation is 10 of total fruit and vegetables.
Yeah.
So I would say more of the vegetables, less of the fruit.
Okay.
So if you're saying 3 portions or 4 portions of fruit, 6 should be vegetables.
Right.
Try and do different vegetables.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fine. So I know talking about what we eat is a huge.
yeah.
Is a huge, yes. But with this is very helpful because the African, Asian, ethnic minority groups listening to you will have an idea what is right and what is, maybe they've been doing the wrong thing all the while, but having listened to you, hopefully we're going to change minds. What about exercises?
Exercise, yeah. So exercise, again, is something that's important for all ages.
Yes.
And, in the toddler group, we don't need to exercise them. They're running about, they're climbing, they're doing it themselves.
Yeah.
Once they're out of that toddler stage, from about 2-3 years onwards, when we're like they can run and jump, we need to be making sure they get at least 1 hour of physical activity outside, or even some of it can be inside, but they need to be like active, doing proper activities, exercises. Children are growing, they're developing their bones and muscle, and they need to do anti-gravity movements as well, which will strengthen their muscles. But they also need to do aerobic exercise, which is like running, jumping, skipping, any activity that makes them a little bit breathless, and it's just very good for their overall fitness and health, but it's actually an essential component to keep them healthy.
Right. One parent was asking, do we need to give our children multivitamins? What's your take on that?
Right. So if a child has a good balanced diet, where we're having a good portion of carbohydrate, starchy carbohydrate, fruit, vegetables, the right amount of fats and protein, vitamins and minerals through fruits and vegetables, we don't need to give any multivitamins.
Right,
If a child is deficient in their diet for some reason, for instance, an autistic child who has very limited in their diet, maybe some children only eat crisps and chicken nuggets and things like that, nothing else, there you may think, yes, I should give a multivitamin.
Right, okay. So in other words, if a child has a balanced diet, there's no need to give all these supplements. Right, yeah, back to exercises. We know that exercise helps children to lose weight or tone up or be happier in themselves, or for the bone health,
all of
muscles,
yeah.
help them to grow.
Absolutely.
So parents, obviously will like to know that allowing children to go and play, whether it's winter, some parents are so restrictive. They say, oh, it's cold outside, you shouldn't go outside. Is that a good advice?
I would say it's really important they get some physical exercise, whether it's outside or inside. I mean, in the summer, definitely outside. Get some vitamin D as well, which is lacking in this country. We can't make it. Yeah. If you're a darker skin, even more, we can't make it easily. We need, in general, white skin needs at least 30 minutes exposure, and dark skin needs more than that. Maybe 40, 45. The moment you start getting sunburnt, means you're not producing any more vitamin D.
Right.
Until then, you can be outside. Obviously, there is the risk of too much sun as well, but whereas in winter, I would say if it's reasonably okay to go outside, if you can, wrapped up, you should do some activities outside.
Right, so for the benefit of the parents who don't understand what anti-gravity exercise is, can you give an example?
Yeah, anything where you're lifting up your arms or your legs from the ground, that is an anti-gravity. So that means, like, for instance, Bhangra is a dance, Asian dance, which is really good for, muscle building, because you do movements like this in there, and that's anti-gravity. You're building up your upper body. Squats is a really good muscle training. Very good, because you're coming down, you're coming up, you're coming down, you're coming up. You're using your own body to lift yourself up. You're improving your core, and you're improving your lower body. Things like also push-ups against a wall. You can do, or you can do it on the floor. For people who can't do it on the floor, you can start on the wall. Just put your arms against the wall, bring yourself closer, move yourself away closer. So you're basically using your body to do that activity. You can use weights for anti-gravity. You can also use resistance bands, which wouldn't be anti-gravity, but it's the same type of activity. It's strengthening. You have those resistance bands. You pull them in and out like this, like this. There's different things you can do with them. Excellent exercises.
I remember one of the former speakers on this show, Dr. Pandal, talked about resistance exercises and things you can do within your home. Families can train, dance, good music together.
Absolutely. Zumba is fantastic.
Zumba, isn't it? Yeah.
It's fantastic, because when you're doing Zumba, you're actually I would say dance is probably the best exercise there is.
Right.
Among like, if we compare all the exercises, if you were to choose one and you enjoy music, I would say do dance.
Right.
Because it has been shown that dance is not only good for the body, but it's good for the brain.
For the brain.
It may even prevent dementia, there's talks about, because what it does is you have a well-being factor with it. And you have that with any exercise, like running, jumping as well. But with dance, especially because of the music, how it relaxes your body, and then you're trying to do the coordination at the same time. So your brain is working with your joints, your movements. It's just a fantastic thing.
All right. Okay. That's fantastic. I think it's been a very useful session today. You've talked on quite a, it's a difficult topic, but you've simplified it. And I'm just thinking, if parents come to your clinic and they're worried about their children or a child not accepting to eat a particular healthy food. Some children are so picky that they just eat the unhealthy ones. Is there any way, anything do you think they can do to such children? Do they bring them to a center, or do they, it's a difficult one, but it's just for parents struggling.
It is educating your child as well, and maybe, as I said, it does start early on, but if you've missed that opportunity where you haven't been able to develop, you can always, for instance, a teenager, when they have that ability to learn about health, and we say just go on to, the NHS website, or tell them, like, I mean, I will tell you about my groups as well at the end, but in the clinic, I usually say to parents that go on to the child itself.
Yes.
If they have a weight problem or they don't eat the right food, go on to the NHS website and look at healthy eating for teenagers, exercise for teenagers, learn about it yourself, and then apply it.
All right. Okay.
That's a good motivation.
No, that's very good. So, did you want to tell us about what you do?
Yeah, so I have, for the last more than 2 years now, I first started a WhatsApp group because I'm also a member of Essex Indians, like Dr. Mandal. And in there, I actually noticed that in our community, because that's all, Asian community, Indians, there is a lot of obesity, and people, the diet is not so good. And people think that because it's Indian food and it's vegetarian, or if it's not vegetarian, it's still healthy. But not everything vegetarian is healthy. And just because you've got used to a certain eating doesn't mean it's the right eating if you're putting on weight. So something has to change. So I felt that whatever I know, I would like to pass this on through tips. So I created a group and I started making health tips on there. So the group, the WhatsApp group is a closed group, which I'm not putting any more people on, but I've also created a Facebook group of the same, and I've got 237 people on it at the moment. It's called Small Changes, Health is Everything, Small Changes, Big Results.
That's
so
good.
Basically small changes in your lifestyle can make a big impact. And I give little tips on what oil should you eat, use in your, how much fat should you have, what should protein, how important it is, about your waistline, how important it is to, waist is so important because people think that people have this concept that their weight is okay because it's within the centiles, but actually if your waist is big, then that weight may not be okay for you. And another thing people don't realize is actually South Asians and Indians in particular, they need to have a lower BMI, body mass index, than the Caucasians, the whites. And we can't measure by the same growth charts.
You don't.
No, well, we have the same because we don't have any for ourselves. But whereas for a white person, a Caucasian person, the BMI of 25 is the borderline to cut off between overweight and normal weight. For Indians and South Asians, it's 23. So they need to be much lower, and our waistline needs to be much lower. We cannot have the same.
So do you measure obesity by the BMI, which is the weight ratio to the height squared, or do you use the weight?
Both. You should do both.
The waist.
You should do everything. So weight, I would recommend if somebody's got a weight issue, definitely try to weigh yourself daily. To monitor. Weekly, do your waist circumference and
the waist circumference.
And there's a correct way of measuring that.
They can look at that up.
You should measure between, like, should I mention how to measure?
You can measure it.
About like from your, usually it's just about 1 centimeter or so above your umbilicus, your belly button. But the best way of knowing is to go from your bottom of your rib cage and the upper end of your hip where the bony part is, in between the midline, is the way where to measure the waist. And for women, it should be less than 31.5 inches. And for men, less than 35. If you are, especially if you are south, and the other thing is my YouTube channel. So so there I'm making videos, and it's the same name. It's Health is Everything, Small Changes, Big Results. And I'm creating videos. And another thing I didn't actually mention, sorry, there's so much to talk about with lifestyle. But sleep is also very important. So this is one thing I would recommend for parents, that please don't forget that your child needs to sleep enough. And you need to have that sleep habit as a family, again, from early on.
So what's the best time to go to sleep?
So, I mean, I wouldn't say sleep after 11 p.m. As a routine, try to make, no, I'm not talking about children, this is adults. Obviously, children need to sleep earlier. Children do need more sleep than adults. And approximately, maybe varying upon their age, but it could be something like 10 hours, 9 hours. But even adults need around 7 to 8 hours.
There was something on the news that they did a study to find out that for good brain health, you need to go to sleep between 10 and 11 p.m.
Yeah, so
have a
after
good sleep?
11 p.m., what kind of happens is because there's a circadian rhythm,
Yes.
our body clock is to do with the light,
Yes.
which regulates our melatonin, which is a hormone that tells us when it's time to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Is all regulated by the sun.
Yes.
The moment it starts getting darker, the evening's progressing, we should be dimming things down and trying to wind down and go to sleep. But nowadays the trend is we party at midnight, you know,
Yeah.
we're watching television, we're on the phone, we're doing computer games.
Yeah.
Children, it's really hard to get them off.
And because of COVID, obviously, some parents think giving the child a tablet to go to bed with is a good idea,
No,
but it's actually
just,
not.
It's just not, because it's keeping your brain awake.
Oh, Dr. Molly Gupta,
Sorry, there's too much to
Agawa.
I don't
I
know.
thank you so much. I hope we have more time, but obviously we have more sessions coming. Viewers, I'm sure you've enjoyed today's session. We have the community pediatrician, you know, explaining healthy lifestyle in very simple language. I hope you've had a good listening and you've learned a lot from this. But remember what she said: everything in moderation. And if you don't have any questions, go to NHS website. All right. If you have any questions, go to our website, basdonsidebyside.org. You know, if you ask any question, we'll pass it to the specialist. So you stay safe, you stay healthy. We'll see you in the next session. Thank you very much, and look after yourself and your family.